I caught my wife cheating in our bed, so I took the house, full custody of the kids and her job. I never imagined that my life could shatter in a single night. I had built a home, a family, and a future with the woman I loved. But love does not mean anything when betrayal is waiting right inside your own bedroom. It was supposed to be a normal evening. I came home early, hoping to surprise my wife. Instead, I walked into a nightmare. My wife was not alone. She was tangled in our sheets with another man. Our bed, our sanctuary, now tainted beyond repair. Shock kept me frozen. Rage burned through my veins. But I did not scream. I did not fight. I only watched as the truth tore everything apart. I could have walked away broken, but I refused to be the victim. That night, I decided I would not just leave. I would take back everything. The house, the kids, even her career. She had built her life using me as a foundation. And now, I would be the one to tear it all down. And that is exactly what I did. Betrayal does not happen overnight. It creeps in slowly, hiding behind routine and familiarity, until it finally reveals itself in the most brutal way possible. Looking back, there were signs. Small things that I brushed off as nothing. The way my wife started working late more often. The way she guarded her phone like it held a secret world I was not allowed to enter. The way her touch became colder, her kisses shorter, her eyes distant. But love makes you blind, and I was no exception. I convinced myself that every relationship had rough patches, that stress could change a person. I wanted to believe she was just tired, overwhelmed, in need of space. I wanted to believe that I was enough. We had been married for over a decade. We built a life together, a home, a family. We had two beautiful children who adored their mother, and I had spent years believing we were a solid team. We shared everything, or at least I thought we did. I worked hard to give her and the kids a comfortable life. I was not some absent husband who ignored his family. I was present, involved, doing my best to balance work and home. I took care of the bills, the mortgage, the little surprises that made her smile. I wanted to be the kind of husband she could rely on. So when I walked into our bedroom that night and saw her with another man, it was not just my heart that broke. It was everything. My trust, my belief in our marriage, the life we had built together. But in that moment, standing in the doorway, watching her betrayal unfold, something inside me shifted. I had spent years giving her everything. Now I was about to take it all back. We met in college. She was bright, ambitious, and full of energy. I fell for her almost instantly. She had a way of making the world feel exciting, like anything was possible. We started dating, and everything felt perfect. After graduation, I landed a great job in finance, while she pursued a career in marketing. We moved in together, got married, and had two kids. From the outside, we looked like the perfect family. A beautiful home, a stable income, two wonderful children, and a seemingly happy marriage. But beneath the surface, things had started to change. Her career took off, and suddenly, she was climbing the corporate ladder faster than either of us had expected. Late meetings turned into business trips. Business trips turned into weekends away. She was making more money than ever, and for the first time, I saw a shift in her priorities. I supported her every step of the way. When she needed time to focus on work, I stepped up at home. I took care of the kids, managed the household, and ensured she had everything she needed. I was proud of her success, but as she moved up in the world, she started looking at me differently. She no longer saw me as her equal. She saw me as the man who stayed home to handle the small things while she built her empire. She had a new circle of friends, wealthy, powerful people who lived in a different world than the one we had built together. At first, I thought it was just the stress of her job. But then came the excuses, the nights where she barely spoke to me, the constant texting, the sudden interest in her appearance, not for me, but for someone else. I had no proof, just a feeling, and I was too afraid to face the truth, until the truth smacked me in the face. That night, I lost everything, but I was about to make sure she lost even more. That night, as I stood in the doorway of our bedroom, time seemed to stretch. My heart pounded in my ears, but my mind was eerily calm. I watched my wife, wrapped in the arms of another man, completely oblivious to my presence. It was surreal. The bed where we had spent countless nights whispering secrets, sharing dreams, comforting each other through hardships. It had now become the setting of my worst nightmare. I did not yell. I did not scream. Instead, I stepped back, quietly shutting the door. I walked downstairs, my hands clenched into fists. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to storm back into that room and demand answers, to throw that man out of my house. But I knew that rage would not serve me. If I wanted justice, I had to be smart. I grabbed my phone and took pictures. Proof. Cold, undeniable proof. Then, I left the house without saying a word. I did not need to hear excuses. I did not need to see the guilt, or lack of it, on her face. Instead of going to a friend's house or drowning my sorrows in a bar, I went straight to a lawyer. I had always been the one providing stability, the one making sure everything in our lives was secure. Now, that same preparedness would be my weapon. My lawyer listened as I laid everything out. The evidence, the years of slow betrayal, the shifts in her behavior. He looked at the pictures and nodded. "We can use this," he said. And that was when I realized I was not just going to leave her. I was going to make sure she lost everything she had taken for granted. I spent the next few days gathering everything I needed. Financial records, text message logs, even old emails that hinted at her growing detachment. I documented how much time I'd spent caring for our children, the effort I had put into keeping our home together while she was busy building her career and finding comfort in someone else's arms. She did not even notice anything was wrong. For 2 days, I went about my routine like nothing had happened. I played with the kids, cooked dinner, acted like everything was normal. Meanwhile, I had already started the legal process to secure full custody. I also looked into her job. It turned out her company had strict policies against workplace affairs, and I had a strong suspicion that the man in our bed was more than just a fling. He was her coworker, a high-ranking executive, no less. I made some calls, spoke to the right people, and soon enough, the pieces started falling into place. Then, the moment came. On the 3rd morning after I caught her cheating, I told her I was taking the kids out for breakfast. She barely acknowledged me, too busy laughing at something on her phone, probably texting him. I drove the kids to my mother's house and left them there, making sure they were safe and out of the chaos that was about to unfold. Then, I went home and executed my plan. With my lawyer's help, I had filed for divorce, requested full custody, and prepared to take legal action regarding the house, all before she even realized what was happening. And then, I made one final move. I sent an anonymous tip to her company's HR department. Attached to the email were photos, timestamps, and enough evidence to prove that she had been engaging in an affair with her superior. By the time she finally noticed something was wrong, it was too late. I was sitting on the couch when she walked into the living room, looking at me with a frown. "Where are the kids?" she asked. I looked up at her, my expression blank. "With my mother." She blinked, sensing something in my tone. "What is going on?" I slid the divorce papers across the table. "You need to read these." Confusion turned to panic as she scanned the documents. "What is this? Why are you—" "I know," I said simply. Her face paled. "I know everything," I continued. "And I have proof." She opened her mouth, maybe to lie, maybe to beg, but I did not give her the chance. "You're going to lose the house," I said. "You're going to lose the kids. And you might want to check your email. Because I think your job just found out too." I'd never seen terror in her eyes before. But at that moment, she realized just how much she had lost. And I was just getting started. Her hands trembled as she grabbed her phone. I watched her pupils dilate, her fingers frantically swiping across the screen. The color drained from her face as reality hit her like a brick wall. She tapped her screen, her lips parting slightly as if trying to form words, but no sound came out. She was looking at the emails. The first was from her company's HR department, a formal notification of an immediate suspension pending investigation. The second was a request for an urgent meeting with senior management. The third was from a colleague, a short but telling message. "What have you done?" She blinked rapidly, her breathing becoming shallow, as if she had forgotten how to inhale. Then, ever so slowly, she turned to face me. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "You did this." I tilted my head slightly, watching her unravel. "No," I said calmly. "You did this to yourself." She shook her head, eyes wide with disbelief. "You were trying to ruin my life." A humorless chuckle escaped me. "No," I corrected. "I am simply making sure you face the consequences of your choices." She had taken me for a fool. For years, she had counted on my patience, my forgiveness. She had assumed I would be too blind, too trusting, too weak to ever retaliate. She thought she would always hold the power in our marriage. Not anymore. She looked back at her phone, her fingers trembling as she scrolled. Then, as if some distant part of her brain refused to accept it, she spoke again, her voice softer. This cannot be happening." Her breathing quickened. Her eyes darted around the room, desperate to find some way out of the chaos she had created. Then came the excuses. "We can fix this," she said, stepping closer. "We have been together for so long. The kids, think about them. Think about what we built." I let out a slow breath, shaking my head. "You should have thought about them before you brought another man into our bed." Her expression twisted in anguish, and for the first time, I saw true fear in her eyes. But it was not the fear of losing me, not the fear of breaking our family. No, it was the fear of losing everything she had taken for granted. She reached for my arm, but I stepped back. She exhaled shakily. "I did not mean for this to happen," she murmured. "It was a mistake. A mistake." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. A mistake is forgetting to pay a bill or leaving the stove on. This was deliberate. Her lips quivered. "Please," she whispered. I love you." I stared at her, feeling nothing but cold detachment. "No," You love what I provided for you. And now, you are realizing just how much you are about to lose. She opened her mouth to argue, but I held up a hand. Save it. Her phone buzzed again. She glanced down and let out a quiet, almost strangled noise. I knew what she had just read. Her lover, the man she had betrayed me with, was abandoning ship. I had made sure of that. See, I had done my homework. I had gathered evidence not just for my lawyer, but for my wife's company as well. And it just so happened that the man in our bed that night was a high-ranking executive at her firm, a firm that had strict policies against workplace affairs. I had sent an anonymous tip backed up with damning proof. And just as I expected, he had wasted no time cutting ties. He was not about to throw away his career for her. He had a family of his own, a reputation. He would let her take the fall. Her hands gripped the phone so tightly that her knuckles turned white. She inhaled sharply, then turned back to me, her voice breaking. Please, let's talk about this. We can work through it. I stared at her for a long moment, then finally spoke. I already did my talking. When I came home every night and asked if something was wrong. When I told you I loved you and you barely even looked up from your phone. Well, I begged you to be honest with me if you were unhappy. Her chin wobbled. But you lied, I continued. You lied, and you betrayed not just me, but our children. You risked everything. And now you are losing it. She let out a choked sob, her body trembling. Please, I cut her off. You need to start packing. She looked up at me, disbelief written all over her face. You cannot just throw me out. I gave her a long, measured stare. Watch me. Her breath hitched. She knew I was serious. I had already spoken to my lawyer. I had filed an emergency motion for exclusive use of the home, citing her infidelity and my need to provide stability for our children. The judge had agreed. Legally, the house was mine. The kids? I had been their primary caregiver for years while she had focused on her career and, apparently, her affair. I had every piece of evidence needed to prove I was the better parent. And the courts would see it, too. She looked around, as if seeing the house for the first time. The framed pictures, the furniture, the life we had built together. It was no longer hers. Her shoulders sagged. Where will I go? I shrugged. That is not my problem. Her mouth opened, then closed. She was speechless, powerless. I had taken everything back. The house, the kids, even her job, indirectly. And yet, I felt no satisfaction, no victory, only closure. I turned away, leaving her standing there, alone in the ruins of her own making. Tomorrow, I would move forward with my life, with my children, with my dignity intact, and she would finally understand what it felt like to lose everything. The house was quieter than it had ever been. For the first time in years, I could breathe without the weight of suspicion pressing down on my chest. The tension that had lived in the walls, the unspoken resentment, the hidden betrayals, it was all gone. The kids were upstairs, their laughter echoing faintly from their rooms. They were adjusting, but I knew they still had questions. My eldest, Liam, had asked me once, "Is Mom coming back?" I had looked into his wide, uncertain eyes and told him the truth. "No, buddy, not to live here." He had nodded slowly, processing it in the quiet way he always did. I had expected more questions, maybe even tears, but instead, he had only said, "Good." That had surprised me. And when I asked him why, he shrugged and said, "Because she was always busy, and she never really listened." It had broken something in me, because for all the ways she had betrayed me, I had not fully realized how much she had neglected them, too. But now, things were different. I had fought for full custody, and, with the evidence I had, it had not even been a close battle. She had tried to fight back at first, swearing she would never let me take her kids away from her. But when she realized how much I had gathered against her, the late nights, the neglect, the affair, her protests had lost their power. In the end, she had accepted defeat. She had packed her bags, leaving the house with a single suitcase. No dramatic outbursts, no final pleas. Just a hollow silence as she walked out the door. I had watched from the window as she stood by the curb, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. I knew she was waiting for someone, but no one came. Her affair partner had abandoned her, just as I knew he would. He had a wife, a career, a reputation to protect. He had cut her off the moment things got messy. And so, she had stood there alone, staring at the empty street, until eventually, she called for a cab and disappeared into the night. And that was it. No more lies. No more betrayal. No more wondering if the person sleeping beside me was hiding a secret life. It should have felt like a victory, but it did not. It just felt like an ending. Weeks passed, and life settled into a new rhythm. I woke up early to make breakfast for the kids, help them with their homework, tuck them into bed at night. I was their constant now, their foundation. At first, my ex-wife had tried to reach out. She had called, left voicemails, sent long messages filled with regret and apologies. She wanted to talk, to see the kids, to make amends. But I did not respond. Not because I wanted revenge, not because I wanted to punish her, but because I had nothing left to say. She had already made her choices, and so had I. The kids saw her during court-ordered visitations, but even those became strained over time. She was not the same woman she used to be, at least not in their eyes. Liam came home from one of his visits and said, "Mom seems sad." I had nodded. "She probably is. She keeps saying she misses us." I sighed, setting down my coffee cup. "Do you believe her?" He hesitated before answering. "I think she misses what she lost, but I do not think she ever really knew how to love us the right way." It was a heavy realization for a 10-year-old, but he was right. One evening, months later, I received a message from my lawyer. The divorce was finalized. The house was legally mine. Full custody was officially granted. The chapter was closed. I sat in my office for a long time, staring at the papers. Then, without really thinking, I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found her name. I hesitated for a moment, then sent a single text. "It is done." She read it instantly. A minute passed, then another. Finally, 3 little dots appeared on the screen, and her response came through. "I'm sorry." I stared at the words, waiting for them to stir something inside me. Anger, sadness, regret. But there was nothing. I typed back, "Take care," and then I blocked her number. It was not out of spite. It was simply because I had nothing left to give. She was my past, and I was finally ready to move forward. Life did not magically become perfect after that. There were hard days, lonely nights, moments where the weight of everything felt unbearable. But there was also peace. There were dinners with the kids, filled with laughter. Quiet mornings with coffee and a book. A newfound sense of freedom in knowing that I had built something strong, something real. And most of all, there was hope. Because for the first time in a long time, I was no longer looking back. I was looking ahead. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. Let me know in the comments what you would have done in this situation.